Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I'm Deb.
And I'm Hugh. And on today's show, we're looking at minute 95, in which Joan Cusack as Marcella is basically this is her dance, right? She didn't get to go to the dance, but we watch her in bright pink, in interesting lighting, dancing around this office, setting fire to it all.
And joining us once again, as he has all of this week, we have Darren Husted of the T. Hanks for the Memories podcast. Welcome back, Darren.
Guys, I think you need to know, once this is over, I will find you.
I hope not.
It's weird because, I like how, he's saying it casually of like, oh, I'll find you. And she's hearing it as, I will find you. And it's
yeah.
I just love the kind of her, hold on. And he's like, no, not like that. Don't like, it's like, okay, I'm a trained killer and all we ever talk about is murdering people. But no, I'm not going to do that to you. Don't worry about it. And I think the money is the only thing that really convinces her that he's not going to do it. Because otherwise, it'd still be up in the air, wouldn't it? Like, you're burning stuff down and you're destroying all the records, but there's still a possibility. Like, the guy's a trained killer, so it's like, once he's given her the money, I think she's like, yes, he's not going to kill me. That's how she knows.
Well, that's what they would have done, isn't it? When we've talked before about where and how they met and knew each other. But if we go with the idea of they met through either the military or black ops or something, and if she was some sort of handler, then she knows full well how these operations go. When you roll up an operation, everybody gets eliminated, and you don't waste money on them. But if you're giving them the actually giving them money, not like saying, oh, it's in a briefcase somewhere or it's in a bank account somewhere. If you're actually physically there, it's the real deal. That's your guarantee. You're out. You're done.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because, like you say, yeah, she dances around this office, but also she has no idea how to destroy data on a computer. She thinks banging the side, maybe it's because these days we know more, but it's like you should be taking the hard drive out of that and setting fire to it or something. You can't just bang the side of the case and then throw it on the floor and think that's done anything. I mean, it might have done. It might be a very old hard drive platter that's in there that maybe it won't boot now, but I think really to be kind of completely sure, take it out and smash it a few times at least, or at least take it with you. Take it out, take it with you, and destroy it somewhere else.
Do you think this was a matter of they can't actually afford on the production to be seen smashing a hard drive, even for there's no sort of mock-up version. It's just easier to just do the casing because it's the cheapest one.
I mean, it looks a lot better on camera, right? Because what you'd actually do is you take the hard drive out, you'd open up the hard drive, you'd smash the wafers in there. It's not very exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Hang a hammer on the side of a case and then throw it on the floor, and
exactly. And plus, I mean, you're singing, you're dancing, you're having a whale of a time. It's a great scene. Even if it doesn't actually clear any of the data on the
But I mean, let's be honest, right? This has always been an issue, right? Realism about anything to do with computing in action thrillers, right?
Yep.
Like there's that wonderful meme that does the rounds with a whole bunch of pictures from various TV shows, films, and animations of floppy disks saying, "Remember when one of these was all it took to save the world?" Right? You know, all the information you need was on the floppy disk. Or what's my other favorite one?
Every part of Swordfish.
Oh, Swordfish is so ludicrous. So ludicrous. Absolutely just, oh my God, there's so much wrong with that film.
There was a point where a lot of Sony films moved on to using mini discs as the thing with data. So because it looked different to a floppy, you could be like, here is the thing is on here, and a lot of people wouldn't even know what a mini disc was, so they'd be like, oh, that looks nice. It's
exactly
fancy technology.
My favorite one is actually quite recent because it shows you how far ordinary people have come. Whichever Bond it is it with Craig? Is it Skyfall, the one where he ends up in Scotland at the end.
Yes,
Okay, so
Yeah.
because
so the
Skyfall's
bit
the name of his house.
that's it. So the bit when they're in London and Q is got the USB drive, and like, I'm sorry, this guy's Q, right? He's the quartermaster general, right? He puts it in a networked laptop. And I'm not joking, right? We were in a packed cinema here in High Wycombe, right? 2/3 of the audience, these are ordinary people. These are not computer specialists, right? 2/3 of the audience went, "Oh, you should do that." Like, we know. Everyone knows you don't do that. Like, at the very least, air gap the freaking laptop.
Yeah.
But no, and then the next thing you know, everything goes down. And I was just like, who the frack wrote this film? Who
Whereas
wrote this film?
Newsroom, credit
Sorry?
to Newsroom, the episodes of Newsroom where Dev Patel is like doing that deep investigation and air gaps everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a fairly major plot of those 2-3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellently done. But
Yeah.
I mean, it either is accurate and boring, or it's inaccurate and exciting, and
Yeah.
you got to take your pick.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah, it is quite funny how well that works, isn't it?
I do love the euphemisms in this conversation as well. Are we out of business yet? I'm taking down the office now. Just phenomenal descriptions for setting everything on fire and leaving.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's why the conversation he had with Debbie like didn't make any sense to her, because this is what they're like. This is what this whole profession is,
Yeah.
And it, like all these conversations with Gross as well, they're all using
Yeah.
euphemisms to describe stuff. And then when Debbie sees a dead body, she can't cope with that. But for everybody else, it's like, have you killed the asset? Is the project over? Has the job been completed? Like, it's all euphemisms,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
taking down the
the
office.
NSA agents are even like joking about like trying to think up new terms for
Yeah.
wax, terminate, like yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that's the way that they kind of talk. But then it's funny that like the only thing he directly says is "I'll find you," and that's the thing where she's like, "Hold on a second, like it's not in code, so
Yeah.
he's serious," and that's the thing that spooks him more than anything is like
Mm.
burn down the office and destroy all the files isn't a problem, but as soon as he's like, "Oh, I'll find you," given the kind of monotone way that he says stuff, it's like, oh, well, there, what's going on? Something's going wrong. And like you say, it takes a stack of money to be like, no, I'm not gonna come and find you in that sense. I will have a drink or something. like,
I think for a world that is full of where everyone's putting everything they do on camera, online, and hashtagging everything, I think it's hard for that people to remember a time where telecommunications felt like a fundamentally private thing. It was you and the other person on the line, and like most people don't know what it's like to be wiretapped, and the euphemisms are absolutely necessary in the Cold War era, right? You have to be able to communicate with each other in a restaurant or in a bus and make it sound like a completely ordinary conversation. You have to be able to talk on the phone with the assumption that you are being tapped and someone is listening. And I love that, right? I love that. As you said, Darren, it's all about the professionalism. It's who they are. It's their world. It's what they do. And they don't know how to not do it. It's how they communicate.
it's funny you say wiretap, because the thing is, in the TV show The Wire, there are entire scenes where
Yes.
you have two drug dealers sitting opposite each other, and they will say stuff like, "Have you spoken to the guy about the thing?"
Yeah.
And he'll be like, "No, the other thing is going to be done before that." And like, if you're not watching the TV show, what they're saying is basically almost next to nothing, because
Yeah.
they're not they may as well not even be using like nouns and verbs, because
Yeah.
it's so restrictive because they
Yeah.
think someone's listening. Ironically,
Yeah.
nobody's listening at that point. People were listening, and that's why they
Yeah.
caught you.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yeah.
the fact that they're so paranoid and they say
Yeah.
everything in code, and it's like it's so funny to watch, because it's the same with I mean, I'm sure, like, I think the Simpsons have done jokes about this, where when the mob are talking to each other, they're
Mm.
like, did you talk to the guy about the thing? And it's like,
Mm.
and it was the same on The Sopranos, where everybody was
Yeah.
always like, talking about, hey, has the business happened with the guy? And you're like,
Yeah.
it's so funny to watch people be that paranoid. But then
Yeah.
also you're watching the show and you're like, justified because people are
Yeah.
really listening in.
Yeah.
And in this case, justified because 2 NSA agents are following him around.
Exactly.
Although they're so
Exactly.
incompetent, he's already made them straight away, and
Yeah.
like so. It's funny that like they're being this paranoid, but yeah, like once all the fancy talk is stopped, and you actually say to another human being, "I'm sorry, but I just enjoy killing people, and that's why people pay me to do it," then they're
Mm.
obviously horrified. you
Yeah.
know, if
Yeah.
you'd have said to them, this is the thing about the thing, then people would be
Mm.
like, okay, I guess it does remind me though that if you're familiar with The Simpsons and the mob guys, there is of course Johnny Tyflips who never says anything, and he's based on a real mobster in
Yeah.
Chicago who, when he was shot, he wouldn't even say where he'd been shot because
Yeah.
he was that careful, and it's
Yeah.
like you end up kind of reaching a level of parody at a certain point of like not
Yeah.
saying anything to the person who's sitting opposite you.
And
I
and
mean,
then you have the opening there for misinterpretation, right? Like 51st State. I said take care of him, not take care of him.
yeah. Yeah.
As
Yes,
That's so
they're trying
funny.
to figure out now what to do with the corpse in the trunk that they were
So
actually
funny.
hoping was going to be a helpful asset to
It's
them.
so funny that. It's interesting as well with The Wire because The Wire is people. I mean, honestly, casual viewers of TV who are aware of it but may not have seen it. It's actually set in the 80s because it's set ahead of the destruction of the projects in Baltimore because there's a whole scene involving that. So yeah, it is the era of wiretapping is the main way to go. And there's
I'm
a
not sure I'd ever realized it was set in the 80s.
well, it's not. It's flexible, shall we say? But
if the
there's
book
very
it's
little.
based on was written in the 80s, so a lot of the
Okay.
tech is
So,
10 years
yeah.
out of date or so.
So
Just
the thing
as
is, the thing is that when David Simon wrote Homicide, that was a year he spent at the end of the 80s with the Baltimore Homicide Squad, and then 10 years later he wrote On the Corner, which was one of the homicide cops had gone to the drug unit, and then left the drug unit and become a school teacher. And he went back to David, who at that point had left journalism for television, and he was like, "You need to come and see what it's like at the other end of what we've been doing. It's not what we thought." And so he spent a year on the actual streets where drugs were, and that became On the Corner, and then The Wire is the combination of both books. And I still think the first season of The Wire is the best season. I still think it's like perfect on its own. Like I love the rest of it, but you don't need the rest of it. But yeah, it was always technically meant to be a little bit earlier than because of when they did the research, because everything's changed by now, right? You don't need, no one is using pages in the 21st century for drugs, and nobody's using, everything's much more tech, and it's a very different world. So I think that's kind of your point about the wiretapping is very well taken. And the other thing about The Sopranos is, of course, the publicity around The Sopranos led to, and I can't remember where I read this, but apparently uh, the advisor they had on the show was still in contact with people at the FBI, and they would communicate various things about wiretapping, things they'd heard from various mobs, and apparently there was a whole discussion about The Sopranos itself by some mobsters going, yeah, I don't know where they got this from, but you know, they know somebody, right? We need to find who that is because it's a little too close, right? Right? You know that thing they did, that thing, and I think that's hysterical. A bunch of mobsters sitting around having a conversation about how The Sopranos is too accurate to certain things. That cracks me up no end.
Yeah, they were very paranoid because they thought that some of the stuff in The Sopranos was based on stuff that they had done a couple of years before.
Yeah,
And they
suppose
were like,
and
how do they know
yeah,
about this stuff? But a lot of it is just like, yeah, well, mobsters beat people up and pressure people to give them money. Like, it's not
yeah.
hard to come up with a story that matches their life.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
also, there was also an FBI advisor. So, I mean, people also forget Nick Pileggi, the guy who wrote Wise Guy, which became Goodfellas. Pileggi's still to this day working in, works in film and TV. He's an advisor on things. He's written tons of stuff. He spent years undercover in the mob, and he continues to stay in touch. And people seem to forget that actually there's like some solid reference points, for this sort of stuff. Like people who know people who can say, "Well, on the wiretap we heard this." The thing about the irony of the NSA agents in Grosse Pointe Blank is they're probably closer to what agents, government agents in America are actually like in terms of being full of themselves and wanting to talk about it all the time, even though they're supposed to keep it quiet. That's why half of them end up becoming film advisors and TV advisors.
I find it funny as well that after because obviously in Goodfellas, well, particularly like also in Godfather, there's the whole thing of like, oh, nobody ever talks, nobody squeals, everyone's loyal, and then it's like, actually, that's the exact opposite. Like
Yep,
almost every single mobster
everyone squeals.
gives everything up by the end because they don't want to spend 50 years in prison, so
Yep,
they'll negotiate it down as much as possible. So when
yep.
it came to a lot of like mob cases, you didn't need tons of wiretapping because you'd end
Nope.
up with like 20 informants who are all willing to tell you everything. And it's like they should have been more paranoid about who they're actually talking to and working with rather
Yes.
than talking on the phone and all that kind of stuff. But I do find it funny that the one line that alarms her is the one where he drops all the kind of the double talk, and she. I mean, I mean, it's a win for her because obviously, he's like reach under the desk and he's like further than that. Like I love that he's almost watching her, but he's not watching her. But he knows that she won't go completely where the money is, so he's like, no, a lot further, like directing her. And then when she sees the money, she's like extremely ecstatic, and it's like, it's a
She's
nice
so
ending for
happy.
her character. Like that's a picture wrap on Joan Cusack. Well done for being extremely entertaining throughout the whole thing, and possibly outshining your brother just a tiny bit.
Just a bit.
But then I mean, has Cusack been nominated? Well, the other Cusack, because I know Joan's definitely been nominated. But has John Cusack been nominated for like any major awards, or is there anything
I'll tell
off
you
the
in a
top of your
minute.
head?
Let me
Because
just look. I'll
I'm
just
not
have a look
sure
at
that he
IMDb.
has. Obviously, I know Joan has for for Working Girl, because
Yeah.
I mean, for the hair alone. I mean, like, it's funny because like this film is like 10 years, 10 years previous, but it's like 10 years previous she had very very big hair, and she was in Working Girl, so it's funny to think of
Right.
her character like 10 years earlier than this.
So, according to IMDb, he's got 8 wins and 21 nominations across various awards. But the only ones that I think really matter, Chicago Film Critics Association Awards.
Okay.
So he
Couple of
was,
Screen Actor Guild nominations, BAFTA
yeah,
nomination, Golden
but
Globe nomination,
yeah, but
mostly for High Fidelity,
yeah,
unsurprisingly.
oh yeah, exactly,
Oh yeah.
exactly. So I don't think the Blockbuster Award really deserves to
I don't
be
know. I mean,
included. He got that
the,
for Con Air.
here's what I'll say. Tom Hanks has got a lot of awards, but in recent years he's mainly attracted the AARP's films for grown-ups. That's the
Yes.
main category where he's getting nominated for stuff, and some of their categories are very funny. They have best intergenerational movie, which I think Tom Hanks was nominated um, the one where he did Finch, where he's like with a robot, and it's like intergenerational. I'm like, how is that Like, I don't like. Just look up some of their categories for the AARP stuff because it's very funny stuff. But yeah, I was trying to think of like significant awards, but I mean, it makes sense that he got nominated for stuff for High Fidelity.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty
but
much.
Yep.
literally the following year, well, I mean, following year in terms of the ceremony, Joan Cusack was obviously nominated for In and Out, wasn't she? A second
Yep.
Oscar nomination.
Yep.
She has yet to win though, unfortunately.
True.
Yeah. Um, last little thing on this minute. I love the callback to "You're a handsome devil. What's your name?"
Yeah.
A nice little touch in the screenwriting on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he finally, like, he's been literally, I don't know how, what's the time span of this film? Like 2 days he's been in town?
It's a good question actually. How long is it?
Like, he
It's
did,
2 or 3 days. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
it's not long.
he got there and went to his, what used to be his house, and then went
Mm-hmm.
and saw his mom. Feels like that's
Mm-hmm.
all the first day, and then it feels like the
Yeah,
second day is
breakfast with Grocer.
yeah, and then,
I think the first day still is also when he goes to the Hippo Club with Debbie. Then
okay,
second day is breakfast with Gross. So I guess
yeah,
maybe he's only been in town 2 days. This is the end of the second day.
yeah,
Which is
Or
kind of a
5 days.
classic crime neo-noir timeline, isn't it? 2 days in the valley, Red Rock West happens in the course of a couple of days. It's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lethal
it
Weapon
gives
happens over a weekend.
it gives you the pacing to keep the
Mm.
movie
Yeah, so
going.
it's
I
it's
think.
funny that he's like spent all this time in town, and then this is the point where he's like, "Oh, we're there. Hold on a second. Let's let's check why I'm here." But
I think he's
again,
been, yeah.
given the twist, it works that like he's been so busy, like
And
he
not
came
just
to
that,
town
right?
to
Like
do something, and then people keep trying to kill him and get him to join a union, and
he
you
came to
know,
town to do something. He saw Debbie, and his like desire to do that something has kind of fallen off a
yeah,
cliff. Is how it feels. And
Yeah.
it's only once he loses Debbie that he's like, well, I guess I might as well finish the job that I'm here to do.
yeah. One might say he's lost his taste for it.
Yeah.
He genuinely has.
But the thing is as well, but like even though he has, he's still willing to be like, okay, one last job. Like I'm gonna have like if I don't do like it's okay burning down your office and giving your secretary like
Mm,
a bunch of money, but you like if you don't at least open that envelope up and find out who you should have been killing,
yeah.
then there's a danger that someone's gonna come after you.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Like I think he's he's still in that mindset of like this has just got to be done, right? Like
Yeah.
if I actually want to be able to get away with you know
Yeah.
shutting the business down, I need to at least finish this. I mean, ignoring all of the threats from Dan Aykroyd that seem to transcend any reality of like what you could or could not do to alleviate them, but
I mean, this is very much. I think also I like the fact that there's also a certain sense of he's lost Debbie, right? Like this is he just blew his chance.
yeah,
So even if he's planning on trying to get her back, the fact is that he's still in that old life. And what else do you do, right? That's the job.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of wonder if Debbie hadn't freaked out, would this envelope have ever gotten opened?
Mm. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but she's a normal person, and telling someone that you kill
Right.
people for money is always going to make you like in his like he wasn't expecting her to come there. She's caught him off guard, and then when he's
Yeah.
just been as honest as he possibly can, she's obviously freaked out. So
Mm.
if she didn't turn up, the next thing he did after checking the office was being shut down would probably have been open that envelope anyway. But
Mm.
there's just been as she has been for the entire film. She was a diversion for the last couple of days, and then she was a diversion for 5 more minutes before he got to opening the envelope. So it feels like
Yeah.
he would have opened that envelope up inevitably before he left town anyway. But it's
Mm.
just since the moment he got there, the thing that's been distracting him has been you know Minnie Driver.
Understandably,
Yeah, and
as we've
her
said
her
before.
her callback to her youth in growing up in Barbados.
Mm.
That's why she put that voice on, didn't she?
Yeah.
Well, it's also a nod to a specific song by the
Yeah.
Specials, but yeah,
Well, yeah,
but yeah, a
Here
bit of both.
come in.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so he's not distracted anymore, so he can go and kill whomever is in this envelope. Which I I think it's funny as well that like I mean I get it shows that this is a well written script that like obviously you don't get impatient with the fact that he hasn't looked at this envelope. Like it's not a thing that bothers you. You're not Millhouse yelling about when are they going to get to the fireworks factory. You're like you're okay with the distraction, much in the same way that Martin Blank is. And then like once we find out who he's meant to kill, this film just wraps itself up straight away. Like it's
Yeah.
like okay, we've got to the point where we find out who it is, and then it's like, oh, 10 minutes later, here are the credits. Like it's like the third act of this film basically almost doesn't exist. Like it's so quick that like everything is completely wrapped up. It's like it's kind of remarkable. Watching it again today, I was like, it's insane how quickly like we
Yeah.
because I got to these scenes and I
Mm.
thought, oh, I'm talking about these scenes, and then after that,
Mm.
it was like minutes later, the whole thing's done, and I was like, well, like I remember it being a breezy film, but I don't remember it like wrapping up that fast. So it's kind of
Mm.
impressive that they managed to kind of juggle all these different elements and it doesn't feel drawn out. It feels like it's been deliberately done, and then you get to the wrap up really fast, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're not hanging around. I guess we're getting to the action and then getting out of here.
Definitely no Return of the King syndrome.
People say that, but when I saw that in the cinema in 2003, everyone was very excited for every single climax that came. People were like, "Yes, that's that's a different thread that's been wrapped up."
Yeah.
Sam
It
Rosie.
the film needs it. There's no way around it.
Yeah, no, you spent 11 hours watching those characters. You can't then wrap that up in 1 minute. You've got to spend another half hour getting every single person in place.
Yeah.
A fun fact: in the entire 11 hours and 40 something minutes, Legolas only says 5 words to Frodo.
Wow.
Directly, he says, "And my bow," and then
that's it.
That's it. That's all they ever. That's why when he wakes up at the end and everyone's coming in, like Legolas doesn't really enter the room. He like stands near the doorway, and it's almost like Frodo's like, I don't know who that guy is. We've never really sat down and had a discussion.
I mean, it is several different stories that just intertwine, right? Like, I mean, realistically, they're barely together, right? I mean, okay, in the Fellowship, they are together for a good chunk of it, but
he's always running ahead.
That's true. Yeah,
he's always running ahead and stating the obvious.
He's always in a hurry to barge his way into another movie franchise that he shouldn't be in. No bitterness about how The Hobbit turned out at all.
I think he just wanted to go back to New Zealand, and it had probably been a while, and he had friends down there.
Yeah, I mean, those elves just never go away, I think, is the problem.
There are we could. I mean, people have done podcasts on it, but there's a whole thing to be done about why The Hobbit turned out the way it did. But that's for another time in another place. Anything more on this minute, gentlemen, or shall we wrap it there?
No, I think we've covered it all. Joan Cusack, good. Joan Cusack, good.
Yeah.
Minnie Driver, probably better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's it. That's it all covered. I don't think there's anything else.
All right then. All right. This was minute 95 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring co-hosts, co-writers, and co-producers Dev Salagar and myself, Hugh David.
Our returning guest for this week has been the fantastic Darren Husted of the T. Hanks for the Memories podcast. Darren, thanks for the memories on this podcast. Where can we find more about you?
Well, it occurs to me, while I'm not a fan of what social media has become now, they're probably, they're probably the only kind of social media proper that I interact with is Letterboxd. So, if you want to hear my many opinions on the films that I'm, watching, then, by all means, go to Letterboxd. As with literally everything that exists on this planet, it's just my name because, as I said, there's not very many of us, and so I tend to get there first and claim the name first, just like I did with Gmail. I was like, I don't want to be like Darren Husted 2 or whatever. Let's get in there very early and get the name, stake out the claim to it. So yeah, if you wish, you can find me on Letterboxd, and just search my name. I'm sure you'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming back and joining us this week. It's been a blast.
No problem. It's been a pleasure to talk about, like I said before, some actual Minnie Driver and some Joan Cusack. I spent a lot of the last 5 minutes not even really getting to talk about them. So it's good to come back and finally talk about the ladies of Grosse Pointe Blank.
That do make this film so good, I think. You can find us on all good podcast players, maybe even the one you're listening to is on. Also on YouTube, X, and Spotify. We are at Debi Radio everywhere, and our website is debiradio.com. All of those, it is DEBI Radio.
And if you want to come and talk with us, find us at the Facebook listeners group, Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club. One more time, DEBI Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment, it was a feeling.